Well, good evening, everybody. We've got a great topic tonight, something you're probably pretty familiar with. It's multiplying and dividing rationals. Now, we've used this word rational quite a bit now, and I just want to remind you that a rational is really just a ratio of either a monomial or binomial or polynomial. And that word ratio is right in the word rational. So we are talking about fractions again, and our goal is to multiply and divide them tonight. So here are the two steps we want to carefully put in our notebook. Step number 1. Simplify all parts to each fraction by factoring. So one of our favorite themes this year is a lot of factoring. Step 2. Cancel only terms that divide out to be 1 or -1. So let me remind you what that looks like. A term cancels if I have an x plus 5 divided by x plus 5. Remember, they don't disappear into thin air. They divide out and become a 1. Or if I have a minus b divided by b minus a, remember, they don't just disappear into thin air either. They cancel and become a -1. So that's when we can cancel. I just want to stress we are canceling one term on the top with one term on the bottom. So exercise 1, and let's label that in your notebook as exercise 1. And all you need to write is the word simplify. Simplify each of the following rational expressions by factoring completely. For the numerical fraction, make sure to prime factor all numerators and denominators. So in question A here, I'm basically just going to divide what I can. I'm going to take that 6/8 and I can divide each of those by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And now I have times this 10/3. Do you see something that can cancel? Well, you have a 3 on the top divided by a 3 on the bottom. That cancels to 1. So on top, I basically have a 10 divided by a 4. And again, I don't want any crazy decimal answer. Let's just simplify those. What number goes into both? Hopefully you said 5. I'm sorry, 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I would say the simplified answer is 5/2. Now, in question B, this one's going to take a lot more work, and that's the type of problem we're going to see. The first thing I do is I rewrite out my division sign and my multiplication sign in the middle there, and now I'll go and factor everybody. And this is a slow process, and you really have to ask yourself, what type of factoring do I have? And we'll just kind of remind ourselves, I always look for a GCF first, okay, and then I try to do some other factoring. So on top, x squared minus 4, do I have a GCF? Well, no, nothing goes into both. So then I would say, okay, I see 2, I see the square term, which is a perfect square, and a 4 is a perfect square. So I'm going to go with difference of 2 squares. And hopefully you've got x plus 2 and x minus 2. Now when I go to the bottom, again, I'll start with GCF. Do I see a GCF? No. So now I've got my MAM factoring, multiply, add, and multiplying. I'm going to go with x and x. Now 6 is that sneaky little bugger. You can use 6 and 1 or 3 and 2. Okay, so just be real careful. If I want to make a 1 in the middle, hopefully you're going with 3 and 2. Because I'm multiplying to a -6, that tells me the signs are different. And if I want to add to a -1, the 3 has to be negative and the 2 has to be positive. Now when I get to the other side, all right, little uglier. Remember, look for that GCF first. I think you can pull out a 3 and an x. All right, and when I say pull out, of course I mean divide. I'm really taking 3x squared and I'm dividing by 3x, and I'm taking 15x and I'm dividing by 3x. So those 3's cancel, and x squared over x is just x, and there's a plus sign. The x's cancel, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now remember, let's not be silly. Let's take 2 seconds and distribute to see if that's what we had. 3x times x is my 3x squared. And 3x times 5 is 15x. It's a quick check. It took 5 seconds. On the bottom, hopefully you see GCF again. I would say I can factor out a 6x. And remember, we're dividing it out. Hopefully you've got x minus 2. All right, now comes the fun part of canceling. Remember, if they divide into a 1, you can cancel. So do you see anybody divided by itself? Well, on this side, I have x minus 2 divided by x minus 2. So those cancel to a 1. I have x plus 2 divided by x plus 2. Those cancel to a 1. Okay, now I can't touch the x plus 5 and the x minus 3, but I can reduce this 3 and this 6. 3 goes into 3 once and into 6 twice. And I can cancel an x divided by an x. So now you just go through, and it's a little messy, but you ask yourself basically what's left on top. Well, those are gone, and I have 1 times x plus 5, which is just x plus 5. And let's see, those are all gone, and that's gone. I have a 2 and the quantity x minus 3. Now you can leave it like that, or you can say that's x plus 5 times 2x minus 6. But either way, we've simplified our fraction. Exercise 2. So again, please label it exercise 2 in your notebook. Simplify each of the following products. All right. So again, there's nothing to factor in this case. My goal is just to simplify. So here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to say, I'm going to make this bigger actually. Hold on one second. I'm going to say 5 goes into 5 once and into 10 twice. Let's see. Now I can go with, let's see, 2 goes into 6 3 times and into 8 4 times. All right. And now let's take a look at our variables. X squared goes into x squared once, and then when it goes into x cubed, I'm left with just an x. Y cubed goes into y cubed once, and if I take out y cubed, I'm left with y to the 4th. So now I'm just going to multiply my top, because remember that was my whole point, was to multiply. I have a 4, a 2, and a y to the 4th, so I'm going to say that's an 8 y to the 4th. Divided by, on the bottom, I have a 1 times 3 times x, just a 3x. And then is this simplified? Well, I can't reduce the 8 over 3, and these can't simplify because they're different variables. So there you have it, our final answer here. Question B. Again, there's nothing to factor because there's no plus or minus sign. So I suggest that you pause it, try it on your own, and then see if your answer matches mine. If you do, you're in great shape. Okay, so again, don't cheat yourself. Really pause it. Let's get the most out of this. Pause it, see what you get. Now, I started to cancel some of mine. It was starting to look a little messy. So I just want to talk through it real quick. I divided these by 2, so I've got a 2 and a 5. I divided the 9 and 6 by 3, and I got a 2 and a 3. And then I canceled that 2 with that 2. My y squareds canceled completely. And now here's what I'm going to do, because it's getting too messy for myself. I'm going to multiply the tops together. So I've got a 5 times x to the x squared times x is x cubed, and then y cubed. Divided by, on the bottom, I have 3 times x to the 10th and y to the 7th. Now at this point I can still simplify. I can't simplify the 5 and 3, but I can simplify the x's. Off to the side I'm going to say 3 minus 10. So I've got a 5/3, and I get an x to the negative 7. Notice I'm not putting it like on the top or bottom. And then I have 3 minus 7, which is a negative 4. I would say y to the negative 4. Now let's go ahead and rewrite that. I'm going to keep the 5 on top and the 3 on the bottom. Because those guys have negative exponents, they're going to go downstairs, x to the 7th, y to the 4th. Now certainly that's not the only way you could have done it. You could have just kept canceling here. It was just getting too messy for me. But hopefully that's your final answer. Question C. So feel free to pause it and copy it down. Now you'll notice we have to factor all of these. So again, I'm just going to start by drawing out my 2 blank lines and think about the type of factoring I want to attack on each one. Again, if you're brave enough, and hopefully you are, you did do these algebra freshman year, pause it, try it on your own, and see if we get the same factors. I'm going to go GCF on top. I'm going to pull out a 2x, and I get x plus 6. On the bottom, I'm going to go GCF and pull out a 4, and I get x plus 2. On the top of this bear here, I'm going to do my multiply, add, multiply rule, my MAM. I'm going to multiply to x, so I get x by x squared, x times x. Now 12, I'll just work off to the side. I've got a 1 and 12, a 3 and 4, or a 6 and 2. Which of those add to a negative 4? Hopefully you're saying 6 and 2, and I know I'm multiplying to a negative, so my signs are different. I'm going to go plus 2 minus 6. And on the bottom, I've got 2 terms without a GCF, so hopefully you catch difference of perfect squares. X plus 6 and x minus 6. Now once you have that, the fun part comes in where we can cancel if we're dividing by a 1. If we cancel to a 1. So x plus 6 divided by x plus 6 is 1. X minus 6 divided by x minus 6 is 1. X plus 2 divided by x plus 2 is 1. And I think we can simplify this. 2 goes into 2 once and into 4 twice. So what is left over after all of this? It looks like I have an x on the top and on the bottom a 2. So hopefully we got a final answer of x over 2. Letter D, last one of this type before we switch it up a little bit. So again, at this point, really pause it, try it on your own, and then play me back. All right, so let's pause it, see what we get. Well, hopefully you've double-checked my math here. I think I did it correctly. Because this binomial started with a 9, my factors had to start with 3's. So I did perfect squares, 3 plus x, 3 minus x. On the bottom, I pulled out a GCF of 2x, so I got x minus 3. And again, just distribute it back through to see if you're right. On the top, I pulled out a 4x, so I have x minus 1. And on the bottom, I did my multiply, add, multiply, and I factored it there. All right, so now the fun part of canceling. Remember, if you can divide by 1, we can cancel. So let's see, 3 plus x and x plus 3. Is that a positive one or negative one? Are those the exact same thing? Well, my 3 and x are both positive, and my 3 and x are both positive. So even though the order is backwards when I add, it's still a positive 1. The x minus 1s can cancel. All right, now the bear trap, of course. 3 minus x and x minus 3. They're not the same, remember. They're different by that negative. And if you can't tell, plug a 0 in. 3 minus 0 is 3, but 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So they cancel, but they cancel to a negative. And I always want to put that negative 1 in parentheses on top. Because remember, we are multiplying. All right, 2 goes into 2 once and into 4 twice. And I can take out an x here, and then that will leave me with an x here if there was an x squared. So now as I multiply across the top with what's left, I get a negative 2, and on the bottom, I just get an x. Negative 2 over x. All right, now we get into the heavy-duty part, dividing fractions. So let's label that in your notebook nice and big. And here's the sentence we need in there. Dividing fractions is really multiplying by the reciprocal. So let me remind you what a reciprocal is. If I say 1 over 2, its reciprocal is 2 over 1. Basically, you take your fraction and you flip it. If my number is 4, well, remember that's really 4 over 1. Its reciprocal is 1 over 4. All right, so exercise 3, please title that in your notebook. Perform each of the following division problems. Express all answers in simplest form. All right, so here's where your details, attention to detail is so key. You have to pay attention that we are not multiplying anymore, we are dividing. So the first thing I'm going to do is think to myself, we just wrote down, when dividing, we're really going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite this. This is really 15x squared divided by 6y to the 5th. And I'm going to change division to multiplication, and I'm going to find this guy's reciprocal. Basically, I'm going to flip it. Okay, so I just want to refresh. We're going to change our division to multiplication, and then we have to flip our fraction or use the word reciprocal. All right, now it's the same thing you've been doing. So let's clean this bear up here. 5 goes into 5 once and into 15 3 times. 2 goes into 2 once and into 6 3 times. Now you'll notice these 3's can cancel. X squared goes into x squared once, and that leaves me with x to the 6. Remember, we're going to subtract exponents when we divide. Y to the 5th goes in there once, and that leaves me with y to the 2nd. So if I multiply what I have left on top, it looks like I just have a y squared. And if I multiply what's left on the bottom, it looks like x to the 6th. And I would say that's as simplified as I can make it. Notice I have different variables, so I cannot subtract the exponents. Question B. Remember, attention to detail is key. Notice that we are dividing. All right, so take a moment and let's rewrite it. We're going to change, we said, division to multiplication, and use the reciprocal of that fraction. So the 8x goes on top, and the 24y squared in the denominator. All right, just like we've done before, let's pause it, don't cheat yourself, see what you get, and then compare it with mine. Well, hopefully your canceling looks like mine. I can walk you through what I did. 8 went into 8 once and into 24 3 times. 10 went into 20 twice, and 10 went into 33 times. Then this 3 and this 3 divided into a 1. X went into x cubed, x squared. And I did y squared, and that left me with y to the 4th. So on top, I think I just have a y to the 4th. I hope you would agree with that. And on the bottom, I have a 2 and an x squared. And remember, we're multiplying, so that's a 2 times x squared for my final answer. All right, question C. Hopefully you're feeling pretty good about these. Again, attention to detail. Watch that division. I'm going to change that division to multiplication, and I've got to take the reciprocal of that side. So I'm going to rewrite it out. So I've got x squared plus 2x minus 8, 8x minus 16. Use the reciprocal, so 2x plus 10, and x squared minus 16. All right, here we go. Let's factor each of these. Think about the type of factoring you're going to do. Why don't you pause it, see if our factors are the same, and then we'll cancel together. Well, hopefully your factors match mine. I did my multiply, add, multiply. I did a nice GCF, GCF, and difference of two squares. So now I'm ready to look for things that divide into 1. Any number divided by itself, or any term divided by itself. So the x plus 4 divided by x plus 4 cancel. The x minus 2 divided by x minus 2. And remember, 2 goes into 2 once and into 8 4 times. So what do we have left on top? Well, it looks like the quantity x plus 5. And on the bottom, I have a 4, and then the quantity x minus 4. And again, you can leave that out front, or you could take a few seconds and distribute. I would just look for the correct multiple choice answer. Exercise 4. So again, please title that in your notebook. We should have the same exercises that match up with the work we do in class. It says when x squared minus 25 divided by 3x is divided by x plus 5 over 9x, the result is what? All right, so it's saying take what you have and divide it by this. So let's rewrite it out. X squared minus 25 over 3x. It says divided by, so let's put our divided symbol, by x plus 5 over 9x. So sometimes they're just going to list it out in a sentence, and you just got to put it into our mathematical notation. It says this term is divided by this term. All right, so watch that bear trap with that dividing, attention to detail. Details, details, details. So let's rewrite it as x squared minus 25. We said we could change division to multiplication and use the reciprocal, 9x over x plus 5. Let's get some good factoring going there. Let's see, what can I factor? I really only have to factor that one term. These are all simple monomials, or something that can't be factored. And I would say I've got no GCF, but I have difference of two squares, x plus 5 and x minus 5. All right, so let's look at our canceling. Does anybody divide into a 1? The x plus 5 divided by x plus 5. The x divided by the x. 3 goes into 3 once and into 9 3 times. So I would say on top I get a 3 and an x minus 5. Do I have anybody left over on the bottom? Well, I technically have a 1, but do we ever really need to say divided by 1? So I would say my final answer is 3x minus 15. And if I scroll back, I'm really hoping that's a choice. 3x minus 15, indeed it is, and we've got it. Well, I think you're ready for the challenge question of the night. So again, it just says express in simplest form, but there's two small bear traps in here. Do you catch the first one? What type of factoring is this big guy here? All right, they all don't have a GCF, so remember that factoring with 4 terms is your factor by grouping. You've probably guessed it. And of course, the other little bear trap is that division sign, which we've got to catch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that division to multiplication. I'm going to flip this fraction. Remember, take its reciprocal. That is the proper word for flipping a fraction. All right, now we're ready to rock and roll. There are 3 easy factors and then that nasty one. So let's get the easy ones out of the way. All right, what type of factoring do I have here? Hopefully you're pulling out a GCF of, looks like 3x. And I'd be left with 8 minus x. Let's see, over here I've got my perfect squares. Those are always nice. X plus 6 and x minus 6. On this side I've got my 2x and my x minus 8. Okay, now this ugly one we know we have to do off to the side. There's no way you can try to squeeze all that in. So let's rewrite this below here. We have x cubed minus 6x squared minus 7x plus 42. All right, this one takes a little bit of energy. We've got to factor the first two terms and the second two terms. So remember, it's all about GCFs. So I'm going to pull out an x squared, and hopefully you get x minus 6. Now remember, my goal is to get x minus 6 here. I need the same thing. What would I pull out to get an x minus 6? Hopefully you're saying a negative 7. Now we do the binomial GCF. So we did the monomial GCF, and now it's the binomial. I can pull out the x minus 6, and then I'm left with, if I take that out of this term, I'm left with x squared. And if I take it out of this term, I'm left with minus 7. So that is what I want to put on top of this fraction. X minus 6 and x squared minus 7. Well, if you have that, you're in great shape. Now we just go through that fun part of canceling. Remember, we're looking to divide by 1. So I think we can kill the x minus 6's. I can kill this x and this x. X divided by x is 1. These guys are close, but of course they cancel to a negative 1, which I'm going to stick on the top. And I don't think anybody else cancels, and sometimes that happens. You just don't get a nice, real cleaned up answer. So I got to multiply everybody that's not left. So that's a negative 2 times x squared minus 7 all over the bottom, which has a 3 and an x plus 6. Okay, so again, I would say that's my final answer. You can leave it like that, or you can distribute through. So I could say negative 2x squared plus 14 all over 3x plus 18. And there you have it. So hopefully we had a nice, easy night for you. Just watch that factor by grouping, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Feel free to come in the morning with any questions.